So I'm going to do this story about Glen Wright, who is very well known in the high security prison, and he's often described as one of Britain's, or maybe Britain's most disruptive prisoner. But he's not very known hardly at all. Like, I can't even find a picture of him online. I can find a few newspaper articles. But in terms of his disruptiveness, and in the years that I knew him, I never knew him once to be violent. And in terms of direct violence, like having a fight or, punching a screw or kicking off, I don't even think he's got it in him. In short, he's a coward. And I will give an example of when he was confronted by a prisoner called Scott Napier. And I'm going to give a brief background into how he ended up in the CSE. When serving a 3-year sentence in 1996 for burglaries, he shared a cell in Woodhill with a guy called William Scott, who he convinced to hang himself. And he did, he went through with it, but he survived. But then just 3 months later, he was sharing a cell again with a guy still in Woodhill with a guy called Cornelius Smith, where he did the same thing again, convinced him to hang himself. What role Glen actually played, I'm not sure it's been 100% ever established, but what is likely to happen is Glen would have told him that he was going to, be the hero, the saviour, and then just sat back. And I think he joked about this, that he just sat back and, waited, made sure, while telling him that he wouldn't let it go that far. And he died, the second one, Cornelius Smith, but he got away with it for about a year. And then he tried it again in Pentonville about a year later. But when the person survived, the third person survives, he's obviously grassed him up. And they've looked at his record and thought, well, he's done this twice before. And then I think they re-interviewed the first person, William Scott, who's told them that it was Glen's idea, and he's convinced him to do it. So he's been charged with murder and 2 attempt murders, and it's been passed around from seg to seg, and on where he just engages in the most grotesque form of self-harm I've ever known, and I'll give some examples of that later. But while he's in a seg, because his trial, the offences happened in Woodhill, they tried to avoid sending him to Woodhill CSE unit for quite a few years because a lot of the staff gave evidence at his trial. But I first met him there in 2001. He came there and he was on a constant watch. And shortly after that, he asked me to do it as well, but he asked a couple of people. But a guy ended up called Kevin McAteer. Kevin McAteer's son became quite famous a few years ago from the Kurzel Massive video. But Glen wanted someone to slash him. He wanted a very large gaping wound. For some reason, he couldn't do it himself, either right across his belly, like all the way across, or all the way down his leg. And he did it across his leg from his knee right to the bottom of his foot, all along like the side of it, the fleshy part. And when I saw him years later, it still hadn't healed because he would never let it heal. And he would rub shit in it, all kinds of stuff. And when he did it, they would treat it as a dirty protest because it absolutely stunk the wing out. This went on for years, so all kind of rot was setting in. Once he went to outside hospital and he was there for about a week. And another one of the things that he was known for, he's always smashing cells up and stuff. Never violent, like I said. But funny enough, one incident once where he pulled out a rope pretending to hang himself while the screw was at his door, but it was on patrol state. So he's got radioed through and they've all come in. And in the struggle, he's whacked one of them by accident or something like that. And he's been nicked for assault on this officer, and he was proud of it. He was showing everyone his nicking sheet, where it said, "You did assault officer," even though he only did it by accident. But it was like he was real proud of it, as if to say, yeah, I've got some violence in me. But one of his most famous examples, which people tore the piss out of him for years, where he smashed up his cell and he stuck the tap up his arse, and it even made the newspaper. I'd love to be able to find it, but I don't think it named him. And one of the screws actually brought it in, and I'm sure we did this just to embarrass him. It was the Milton Keynes on Sunday, and it said something along the lines of a security operation at Milton Keynes General Hospital because of a highly dangerous prisoner from Woodhill's notorious CSC unit, and several police and prison staff had to be available. And then it said, for a prisoner who had a tap stuck up his rectum, and he had to have surgery. He's done all kinds of things. He used to suck blood out of all his wounds and spit it through doors at screws and pieces of porcelain into all his wounds. He's put pens, ink, like where you take the nib off a pen and blow the ink. He's rubbed all that in his wounds. He's been at hospital, DSPD units. He's been all kinds of places, but he always just gets kicked out for disrupting the place when he can't get his own way. And one of the stories, I'm going to go back what I mentioned at the beginning. We were on A-Wing in Woodhill CSC unit, which is like the non-compliance. You get 1 hour on exercise a day on your own, and that's it. You walk past at the front of the yard, And there was a guy there called Scott Napier. This was 2003. And Scott Napier had about a year left, a year and a half. And he got sentenced before the IPP came in. And the Screws hated Scott. And Scott just hated them. He was always arguing with them. But they were being provocative from him. But Scott didn't want to do anything because he knew the IPP was out. And if he assaulted one of the Screws, then he was getting lifed off. And he was out in about a year or something. And Scott Napier's from Liverpool. But the Screws would absolutely torment him by like ripping up his canteen sheet. They would not hand his menu in, so he'd go on a vegan option all week and shit. But they would escort him on the yard, and everyone was on an SO15 unlock at this time. But they'd get him in the blind spot, and the Screws would say, like, come on, take a swing, as if trying to provoke him. And they'd walk past his door because he had long hair, mainly because he said he wouldn't let the Screws cut his hair, so he just looked a bit scruffy. And the Screws used to walk past his cell going, big issue. But it was as if Glen saw us to make himself popular with the Screws by picking an argument with him, and he started spitting at him through the gate when Scott was coming out onto the yard, and then the Screws was like, make sure we get out of the way first. And then we started meaning of it. Geordie kid called Ray Anderson thought, we don't like this, the way he's siding with the Screws, and the Screws are saying, yeah, make sure we get out of the way first. But anyway, it's about a year later now, and Scott's moved up onto B-Wing, where we're all getting association, and he's actually speaking to him on the surface of it, out the window, and him getting like Zopiclone and stuff off Glen, because Glen, he was like a walking chemist. He would just pull tablets, all kinds out of anywhere. He wouldn't always take his medication. But anyway, we're on B-Wing, the progressive part, where we're in groups of 4 people. There's 4 people in one group who got their associates together and 4 on another. And it's because Scott's a big Everton fan, and he was can't remember whose associate was, but Scott said, I don't want my associate, I just want the shower, just so he could bang up and go and listen to the Everton match. He'd say to us offhand, if I catch Glen Wright on his own, I've not forgot when he was spitting at me through the gate. And so I'm in the shower with Ray Anderson, little Geordie kid, and so I'm in a group with Ray Anderson, Glen Wright, and I can't remember who else. So we've already gone in the shower, and Glen Wright's getting changed, and Scott's actually in the shower. So we're both taking our time getting changed, so I thought, we want to watch this. So Scott's walked out the shower, didn't even bother getting dry, walked right up to Glen Wright, and he's like, you want to fucking spit at me now? You want to go and fuck? And Glen's just gone white. He's like, what, that was ages ago. And Scott's like put his hands up as if like he's in a boxing stance, and he's like, come on, spit at me now. And Glen's just shook, and Scott's just started laying into him. But Glen's just got him in a headlock. And it ended up just being a bit of a stalemate. And I think they were just like grabbing each other's balls, and we're there looking at Ray thinking that this is quite embarrassing. This Scott's skinny as fuck, but he's quite gain. But I remember once I was in Whitemore and I asked a Screw, and I said, we were talking, Charlie Bronson or someone was in the paper, and it's got like Britain's most dangerous prisoner. And I actually said to one of the Screws, who is the worst prisoner you've ever come across? And straight away he said Glen Wright. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting, because Glen Wright is not a direct threat to staff. He's just a nuisance. And I've actually asked that to quite a few staff Screws in the dispersals. And Glen Wright, more than one Screw has said he's the worst prisoner they've had to deal with. Ferdinand Lieveld has been another one. In the early years, a lot of them used to say Reg Wilson, who's just been released. But yeah, he's not violent. He did actually become a Muslim long before it was like fashionable in high security prisons. I mean, he knows absolutely nothing about the religion other than to say assalamu alaikum to other Muslims, and that's about it. And you don't think he's ever read the Quran, and he doesn't observe Ramadan or anything like that. But I could probably get another video about Glen Wright. I mean, I did know him for quite a few years. I think I last saw him, it would have been Whitemore, Christmas 2009, early 2010 when I last saw him. So I'm going to leave it at this one. I might do
Would you is a dump.
That's AI, that picture. Yeah, so I'll leave it at this one.